time. Hello, and welcome to Into the Liminal Abyss Paranormal Podcast. I am your show host, Shetan Noir, and today I am speaking with Mr. Damian Gray. Damian, how did you become interested in the subject we're going to talk about today, UFOs, and what is your background with? I know you have your own podcast, and you probably have a lot of other things going. So, tell us more about yourself.
Well, hi. Yeah. As far as my background goes, about maybe, I want to say it was about years ago, my friend Ralph and I started a YouTube, and we are both interested in the paranormal and all things strange and unusual. And it's called Black Oceans. And so we started that. And then just recently, I believe it was maybe 2 months ago, we started doing a separate podcast called the Paranormal News Network. You can find that at Podbean and also at iHeartRadio. And what we do is we bring our listeners the latest paranormal news. So there's that. How I got interested in UFOs was because in 1995, I had a flashback memory that knocked me for a loop. About being abducted by aliens when I lived in Southern California.
And so that, how did you learn more about that memory, and where did you go from there?
Well, like I said, this was in 1995 when I had this flashback memory, and I suppose I should preface this story with that. Prior to that, I mean, I believed in aliens. I believed they existed. I just didn't think that they had much interest in us. I didn't necessarily believe that we were being visited. But I had a friend of mine, Clay. He was at my house one evening, and he was a firm believer in this. And he had a book with him. It was like a companion book to that old series, The X-Files. And so he's telling me about, how he believes in it and all this stuff. And I'm kind of thumbing through the book, and I came across a picture of, I believe it was a fox molder, and it's a still from the from the series. And he's reaching up into the sky, and hovering over him is a triangular-shaped UFO with lights at each point. And I'm glad I was sitting down at the time because I completely blacked out, and I had this very, very vivid memory. When I came to, my girlfriend and Clay were standing over me, and they're like, fanning me and stuff. And I remember the first thing I said was, "That's it. It's not it, but that's it. It's much, much larger than that." And so anyway, I'm going to the whole story with that. So the memory I had place in 1988. Now, in 1988, I was temporarily homeless. I did have a roof over my head because I lived out of my car. And but during this time period, there were certain rest stops along the freeway. I was living in Southern California, by the way. There were certain rest stops along the I-10 freeway that I would frequent in order to get some sleep at nighttime. And, I could go there and not be bothered. And I would go to different ones because, cops would patrol the areas. And if they saw me at the rest stop too many times, I'm sure they would have bothered me anyway. At least. So anyway, so one evening I was driving on the freeway, and I was heading eastbound on the I-10 freeway. And the rest stop I was going to was approximately about 5 miles away. And so I'm almost there, and I get to a point where there's an exit called Haven Avenue in Ontario. And the freeway was blocked off from that point on. So I had to get off on Haven Avenue. I assume it was for just construction or something like that. But anyway, I had to get off on Haven Avenue. And I knew there was a way that I could get to the rest stop, but I would have to go northbound on Haven and then turn on Highland Boulevard. But this whole thing would take me about maybe, I don't know, 8 miles out of my way. But so I did that with the intention of still going to the rest stop. So I drove all the way up Haven Avenue, and I finally turned on Highland Boulevard. And now, Highland Boulevard at the time in 1988 was barren. I mean, they had nothing there but grape fields, basically. And so, I mean, there weren't any street lights or anything like that, and it was late at night. And so, as I'm going down Highland Boulevard, I started to notice this light in the distance on the horizon. And as I'm going, the light started getting bigger and bigger and brighter. And so I'm kind of mesmerized by this, going, what is that? I've never seen this structure here before. I've never seen anything like that. I mean, it was obviously not a star or a plane or anything like that. It was just stationed in one spot. So as I'm going along, suddenly this ball of light, it had kind of an inner glow to it, and it was about the size of maybe a basketball, I guess. And it started matching my pace on the driver's side of my car, about maybe 6 feet away. And so I'm looking at this now, and then I'm looking at the other thing. I'm really surprised I wasn't in an accident because I was just confounded by these things. And so then, as I'm driving along, suddenly the ball of light that's next to my car takes off at just light speed, and it joins with the other light. And by now, I'm going, what the hell is going on? And so, anyway, so as I keep driving, this light in the distance gets brighter and brighter, and it's suddenly starting to take structure. I'm starting to see what it is. And it kind of looks like a building, but I don't see anything supporting it, as you would. It was just hovering there. And what I saw was that it was this great big black triangle. And when I say it was big, it was approximately the size of a football field and approximately the size of a 2-story building. So as I'm going a quarter mile less from the object, my car stalled out.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't even really notice it because I was so transfixed on this ship. And so I had a Hyundai GLS. That was my car, and I had a sunroof, and so I pried open the sunroof, and my car came to a slow, steady stop, and I was approximately right under the thing, but the ship was in the grape field next to the road. So once it stopped, I kind of slithered up through my sunroof to get a better look at this thing, and I saw that underneath the ship, there were these multicolored lights that were kind of snaking under the ship, and then, snake out and then disappear, and then snake out and disappear. And they were like red, green, and blue, that kind of thing. And it had the 3 lights, the great, large lights on the point tips of the triangle. And then, so as I'm kind of sitting up through my sunroof looking at this thing, I hear this voice behind me. And it was a guy, and he says, "Sir, I'm going to need you to sit down." And it startled me because I didn't realize he was there. And so, behind me, and he was, how people picture the Men in Black, he was
right.
in a dark suit with a white shirt and a dark tie. He didn't have sunglasses on, but anyway, so looking at him, I immediately complied because I thought, well, this guy's got some sort of, command over me or something. I don't know what's going on. And when I sat down, I looked forward through my windshield, and there were 3 black like army jeeps parked across the road. So I'm glad my car stopped because I would have plowed right into him, considering I was looking at the ship. So he motions for me to roll down my window, so I did, and he says, "What are you doing here?" And I kind of explained my situation. I said, look, I'm homeless. I was just trying to get to a rest stop to get some sleep. He says, "Well, you're a little out of your way, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah, but the freeway was shut down." And I told him, I said, "Look, I don't know what's going on here, but I don't want any part of this. Can I just go and, I won't say anything about it?" He says, "No, I'm sorry, it's a little late for that." Anyway, so it was when I was talking to him, and I don't know why I didn't notice it earlier, but standing right next to him, and I think maybe the thing was standing behind him a little bit, so that maybe that's why I didn't notice. Somebody looked down and his waist level, and there was a small gray alien there. It was a typical gray, and I would say it was probably maybe 3.5 feet tall, and I remember looking in its eyes and being mesmerized because those multicolored lights under the ship that I told you about were reflecting in his eyes. And I don't know why, but I was fascinated by watching it. And, I mean, that, aside from the fact that I'm encountering an alien for the first time, I mean, I was in shock. And so, anyway, the thing looked at this guy, and the guy looked back, and there was no verbal communication with him. And the guy says, "I'm going to need you to step out of your car." So hesitantly, I did so. And then he tells me, he says, "They want to take you aboard." And I'm like, "Aboard that? I don't want to go aboard that." And he's like, "Well, you don't really have a lot of choice in the matter." He says, "I'm just letting you know." So I'm like, I really don't want to do this. And I was kind of begging the guy, and the thing stepped forward and placed its hand on mine. And I still remember the feel of it. It was almost like plasticine. That's the best way I can describe it, I suppose. But as soon as it touched me, all my apprehension went out the window. And next thing I know, we're walking into the great field under this big craft. And how we got aboard, I don't remember. But the next thing I remember, though, is that I was lying on a metal slab. And the slab was strange because it was almost like, those memory foam mattresses?
Yes, yes.
It was like that. So it completely conformed to my body, but I couldn't move, and I wasn't strapped down at all. But the only thing I could move were my eyes, and through my peripheral vision, I could see there were other people on board on their own slabs. And a lot of, like a team of aliens were gathered at various tables in this. And then they eventually came over to me. One of them came up to my head, and I got this impression that it was female. I don't know why that is, but I got the impression it was female. And I looked down toward my feet, and there was like a big catwalk in this place. And the whole place was kind of dimly lit and kind of like a dark grayish. But I looked down toward my feet, and there was a catwalk, and there was a large white alien that was standing on this catwalk. And it almost seemed to me that this one was directing everything that was going on. But anyway, so the female that came up to me placed her hand on my head, and I blacked out. And at the time, I didn't remember anything that had happened at that point. But the next thing I remember is that this female alien and I were walking in this other area of this ship, and there was a large window on the side, and I could see my car down below, still on the road. And she started asking me questions, or rather, what she did first is she pointed to this big screen in the room and was trying to indicate that this is where they were from, and I really didn't understand it. I couldn't tell you today where exactly they were from, but she was trying to indicate that was where they were from, and she was communicating this to me telepathically. But then she started asking what I thought of religion and society, and I understood that, because I'm very opinionated. And so, so I told her what I thought about it, and and I remember that kind of a lengthy conversation about this, and she didn't need knowledge upon me; she just wanted my thoughts on this. So the next thing I remember, I'm off the ship and I'm back in my car, and I'm up at the top of Haven Avenue now, where I first turned off on the highway. And it's morning. I remember there was a small doe through my driver's side window. And I thought, what the? And the thing darted off. Now, since then, I've heard of people that have had aliens see owls or a deer or something. Oh, now it kind of makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I didn't remember any of this until 1995, and it just shocked the hell out of me. And for the longest time, I was stone cold silent about this. I didn't tell anyone because I thought I had lost my mind. I thought possibly I was hallucinating because I wasn't eating right at the time, and I was trying to convince myself that it was just all a hallucination. But the more I have spoken with other abductees and read about their experiences, I'm now thoroughly convinced that it happened. And like I said, I came out about this actually on our YouTube channel, and I was very apprehensive to do it because I know a lot of my friends and my former coworkers watched the thing, but it's almost like when a gay person comes out of the closet. It's a very freeing experience. But yeah, because I've lived my life as a restaurant manager the majority of my life, So I couldn't tell any of my coworkers about this because you have to command somewhat modicum of respect, But anyway, yeah. So that's pretty much what got me interested in the whole alien.
Now, see, it's interesting that you said you wanted to stay quiet about it. When for me, it seems like it's if you haven't had a paranormal, experience, a UFO encounter, cryptozoology, creature, encounter or sighting, then you're kind of like they're on the outs. I think it's more normal if you have had one of these experiences, and because most people that I talk to, they ask me what I do for a living. And once I explain to them, I'm an author, I'm a writer, and I'm a podcast host, and these are the subjects that I encounter. It's, oh, well, you won't believe me, but this happened in my past. No, I do, because you're not the only one. I think people who claim that they've never had any experiences like this, I think they're the oddballs that, it's like, no, you must be really boring, or, something's wrong with you, that nothing wants to, interact with you. So I think it's actually more normal now than, let's say, 15 years ago, to have an encounter or something that, is, looms into the fields of paranormal, in that umbrella term of, the high strangeness.
Something else I wanted to bring up here, in addition to my story about the encounter, once I had that initial flashback, I had flashbacks that occurred on and on and on for several years, so all of that memory didn't come back to me at once, but a good majority of it did. And but like I said, I blanked out when I was on the table when she put her hand on my forehead. And so I didn't remember anything like, probing or anything like that, any weird experiments, until about, and I always thought that they were good beings, I thought they're just visiting, they're just curious, and maybe that's what it is. But anyway, about 2 months ago, my wife and I were sitting in the living room, and we were watching a fictional movie about abductions that were taking place, and it was called The Fourth Kind. Anyway, during the movie, there was a scene in there where she was remembering her abduction, and in it, there was this drill-like apparatus that was coming toward her eye, and I immediately freaked out. And it wasn't another thing where I blacked out, but I immediately had a memory of everything that had taken place during that blackout period. And it was horrific, to say the least. And, I mean, it was so bad I had to go outside and kind of breathe in fresh air and calm it. I mean, I was a blubbering mess, and but needless to say, I turned that movie off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and so like I said, I've always thought that they were benevolent beings, but now I'm convinced that they are somewhat, I don't want to use the word evil. I was talking to a friend of mine by the name of Kim O'Connor, and she's a fellow abductee. And I was telling her about this, and she says, they're not really evil. They're, think of them more as like our scientists and the way we do animal experiments.
That's what I was just thinking is we are to aliens what animals are to us.
Yeah.
Or for some of us.
But then I was also talking to Heidi Hollis. I'm sure you know Heidi Hollis. She's the author of many books, and she's the one who coined the term Hat Man and Shadow People. And I told her about that, and she had just the opposite view. She said, no, they're absolutely evil. So I don't know where I stand on it, but yeah, but it was I get the impression that there are pretty bad things, Now I can't say that about all alien races because I think some are indeed benevolent, like the Pleiadians, for instance. But I do think that the Greys are having nefarious reasons for coming here, along with the reptilians.
Yeah, and that was going to lead me to my next question. Now, you said that there was a gray, but there was also a white. Do you think there was any other species of aliens on that ship that you were taken onto?
On board, not that I saw. I know I can't say for sure, but not that I saw. But like I said, I got the feeling that this tall white alien, which looked very much like the Greys, only was taller. Like I said, I had a feeling that it was directing what was going on. And so I kind of get the feeling that the typical Gray is actually working for this other species.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Something else I forgot to mention, one of the things that happened during the encounter is I saw one of the Greys without its eye shields on. They're like plastic, almost like sunglasses. And they were taken off. And I think the reason being is because I think that's the reason the interior of the ship was dark. I have a feeling that bright light hurts their eyes.
Yeah, I that seems very plausible to me because if you think about it, in outer space, it's probably very dark, and the inside of their ships probably have, like, with our, when we're driving at night, our consoles are lit up, but it's not a bright light.
Right.
And
right.
so for them, being in outer space in a dark ship, they're probably used to low light conditions, whereas we function in both bright daylight and at night. But at night we have the aid of artificial light, and so we don't really have to adjust our eyes much. We just work, but for them, I can see why they would probably use something like a sunglass type device.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and one other thing too is that their eyes look almost reptilian. They're cold people, and
Mm-hmm. Which which begs the question of, uh, maybe they are, reptilian, but could they have um, had genetic ties with maybe some of the dinosaur species that roamed Earth millions of years ago?
Yeah, entirely possible, I suppose. Yeah.
I mean, maybe certainly for like the reptilians.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Now,
in my research, I've come across that the reptilians and the Greys, for some reason, they're battling with each other. And I know for certain that the reptilians and the Pleiadians are certainly battling with each other. But I don't know if they are subspecies of one another or what. I don't know.
now, have you heard? I think the closest report we have to where I live in Michigan is down in Ohio, but there's been reports of lizard men. Do you think they are a part of that reptilian alien species, and they're just here as maybe either information collectors or field researchers for them?
Yeah, I think that's entirely feasible. We did a show on cryptids in Ohio, actually, at Black Lotus Productions YouTube channel. And the stories that I came across, that was my immediate thought that they could possibly be these reptilian aliens. And I still think that that's entirely possible. But from what I've the research that I did is that these eyewitnesses who saw these things described them differently from people who have witnessed reptilian aliens. The reptilian aliens tend to be very tall, and these reptiles, reptilian creatures that these people are seeing, tend to be kind of short, not only about 4 or 5 feet tall.
Okay. Because the reports that I've come across, they're mostly water dwelling, but they're strong enough to pull down an adult human being under the water.
Right.
And
right.
so that that I know that a 5-foot fish has enough pull on it to take you down under the water if you're lighter weight, but I would think that you'd have, something that pulls you down, because they actually grab you by, a limb and start pulling you down, according to the reports that I've seen. That would have to be, your size or bigger to start pulling a thrashing strong adult underneath the water, especially if they're using some type of inflatable, object to keep them buoyant.
From what I understand, they're very bulky. They're very strong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we all know that muscular, like if you compare like a Labrador Retriever to a bulldog sink, Labradors float and swim. So the more muscular something is, the heavier it weighs, the more it will sink to the bottom. Whereas the more body fat something has, the more likely it is to float on surface.
Right.
And I know that for I know that for a fact because I like to go. We have so much lakeshore around Michigan with the Great Lakes that it's always nice to go look for the different agates and stuff like that. And last summer we were up in the Leland area of Michigan near Traverse City, and there was a lab and there was a bulldog, and the lab went charging out to grab its one of those squishy footballs, and the bulldog wanted it so bad, but the bulldog went out to about its chest and tried to swim and started sinking. So the owners had to run in and grab it and bring it back on shore. And it was the bulldog was so mad that the lab, was having this great time in the water, and the bulldog couldn't. So I know for a fact that bulldogs sink, Labrador Retrievers float. So.
Now you say you're in the like near Lake Michigan and all that.
I'm in Michigan, so I am surrounded by the Great Lakes.
Right.
And that is my major field of research with doing like lake monsters and stuff like that.
That's what I was going to ask you about. I'm pretty fascinated by lake monsters. I lived in Minnesota for the longest time, and
Yeah.
by Lake Superior, it's I can't remember the name of the monster that's in Lake Superior. I think it's called
Inabishu.
Okay,
There's Pressy.
Pressy, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, Pressy, and then the Native American one is Inabishu. Some people pronounce it Mishabishu, but it's actually closer to Inabishu. So,
Okay.
and that is the great underwater panther.
So, have you ever had the privilege to see anything in Lake Michigan?
Going back to my early childhood, my parents liked to camp when we were kids. That was a cheap fun vacation for a family of 5, and so we were always camping, and we were always going to Muskegon and Grand Haven and places like that where they have the long piers that go out into the water, and you fish and play on the sand dunes. But my dad would always tell us, if something starts pulling, your rod, your fishing rod, really hard, hand it to me and I'll reel it in. Because we were used to like the little perch and stuff like that. But in those areas where those long, because usually there's a lighthouse at the end of them, those long piers, there's lots of salmon, lots of different types of salmon and large bass and stuff like that. So not wanting us to get pulled in, he would take, the rod and he would reel it in. But I don't remember us catching anything more than, perch and sunfish as kids. But occasionally we would go out into the boats, and it wasn't until I was older, in my late teens, that I started researching more of the paranormal and cryptozoology, and I started reading the books by Frederick Stonehouse that talk about the lake monsters, and I'm like, are you kidding me? We used to go out on these fishing boats and these trawlers and be fishing and not knowing that we're probably over the top of a fish, of a shipwreck or something like that. So I haven't had a lake monster sighting, even though I do a majority of my research is based on that. But I have had a Bigfoot encounter, and that was pretty interesting because I was my mom, most of the warmer months, she is up at the North American Bear Center in Ely, Minnesota, and she works there. She helps take care of the black bears. So it was actually my first trip going up to visit her there, and I was coming on my way back. I had left at 3 o'clock in the morning from Ely, and to get to Ely, Minnesota, you drive to the middle of nowhere and you drive past it.
Right.
Northern Minnesota, there it's like the UP of Michigan. There's not a lot there. So you drive a 2-track highway from Ely into Virginia, and then you pick up the 4-track. Well, just as I was coming up the incline onto the 4-track, the on-ramp there, I was driving a Jeep Wrangler at the time, and if you know what the width of a Jeep Wrangler is, then you can imagine, this scenario. So in between the two lights of my headlights, I see tall grass, thick, shaggy fur, black in color, tall grass, thick, shaggy black hair, tall grass. And it takes about 10 seconds, or about the time that it took me to get up onto the 4-lane highway, to realize, wait a minute, that was an animal. And that wasn't just any animal. That wasn't a bear. That wasn't a moose. Because wherever the head and shoulders of this creature were taller than what I was sitting in my Jeep Wrangler. Because I would say that from where my eye level was, I was looking at about the chest level. So the head and shoulders were about 3 feet above where I was. So that was my first actual Bigfoot, um, sighting. And then you have to drive, through wilderness, or, it's talent. Once you get past Mackinac City, going into the UP and through Wisconsin up into Minnesota, your towns are few and in between. So you have lots of time to look across, the vast spaces of open, forest and stuff, and see. But I love doing research into the lake monsters, and we haven't had really very many recent ones, or what I will say are um, honest, real recent ones. There's lots of hoaxes out there, so
Right.
I'm
Right.
always,
Crazy.
yeah, and for me, when I'm doing research and I'm writing books, my time stamp of when I will believe a report and when I won't is the P.T. Barnum time. Because before P.T. Barnum, nobody really wanted to make a report about anything like that. UFOs, monsters, ghosts, because it drew attention to you and you were crazy. After that time period, it was, oh, well, maybe if I, you know, get in cahoots with the local, newspaper editor and the mayor, maybe we can get some publicity coming into our town, some tourist dollars. And you see that trail of thought going through, Wisconsin with all the lake monster reports inland. So it's, for me, that's my timestamp is P.T. Barnum.
Yeah.
Before him, I will take it, as a historical report. After him, it's I take it with a grain of salt, and I try to see if there's any official documents or eyewitness reports with a full name. Um, because it's very easy to say, well, so and so, or John, from such and such saw, and that just aggravates me after a while.
Yeah. I got to say, I'm relatively skeptical where it comes to. However, there are three whole explanation, and I believe they exist because it's extremely possible they could exist. And that is Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and lake monsters, and the Michigan Dogmen. I think that these things do exist because, well, first of all, so many of the reports seem credible. But aside from that, in the areas where they're supposed to exist, they could thrive.
Oh, yes.
In those
Yes.
areas. I mean, take Sasquatch for example. Most of the United States Northwest and that part of Canada is so densely forested that when people do see these things, it's only because they have come out towards society. And I think that that's why they usually remain so well hidden. And the same thing goes with the Michigan Dogman, I think, because it's pretty forested there, as I understand.
Oh, yeah. See, what I normally tell people is anywhere you have fruit orchards, apple orchards, berry farms, any type of farm that's growing fruit or vegetables, cornfields, anywhere you have those areas, you have the potential for herds of deer. Anywhere you have a herd of deer, you have the potential for predatory animals,
Right.
including Bigfoots, dogman, wolves, mountain lions. So anytime you have those two elements of the fruit and vegetable, corn, farms, fields, orchards, you have the potential for deer, and then you also have the potential for big predatory animals.
Right.
So
Right.
it's everybody when they think of Michigan, they think Detroit or Flint.
Right.
And yes, those are two very populated cities, but within a mile of the outskirts, you've got farms. You've got
Sure, and like up in the UP. I
oh
mean,
yes. The UP of Michigan going into Wisconsin is, except for the winter months, is prime habitat for any creature that wants to go unnoticed by man, because it's just wide open. You have some major towns like St. Ignace, Sault Ste. Marie, Marquette, um, Escanaba, but in between those cities, you have just huge 50-mile areas of just nothing but national forest.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's literally, it has Lake Superior above it and Lake Michigan below it. And then you've got rivers and streams and lakes running all through that. So it's prime habitat for anything.
Sure, right, right, right. And I'm pretty well convinced that, maybe not in all of them, but I'm pretty well convinced that these lake monsters exist. Now, what they are, I tell you, you know, a lot of theories out there that they're eels or that they're sturgeon or, possibly some plesiosaur, but I don't know. But I do believe that something is out there in these lakes.
Yes, I see. For me, lake monsters fall into 5 categories. You've got your giant sturgeon. You've got your serpent, your giant serpent sea monster. You've got your turtles, giant turtles, and then you've got the plesiosaur, which to me, plesiosaur is an umbrella term for all ancient marine reptiles. And then you've got the amalgamations, which are like the Native American legends, like Inabishu and Carcagna, Gassendia, and a couple of other folklore dragon-type creatures that are supposed to guard the lakes. Now, with the plesiosaurs, I do have a theory about what people are possibly seeing, and that is it's a residual haunting.
Okay.
So just like with human spirits, sometimes they become, depending on how they died, the circumstances of their death, that energy is time stamped into the location, and it doesn't matter if the house or building is torn down, rebuilt, it will replay itself.
Okay.
Like a DVD set on,
Sure.
replay. So I think that is also possible with animal spirits. And I think with like the pterosaurs that people sometimes report seeing and the plesiosaurs that people, or marine reptiles that people report seeing, I think what they are seeing is the last few moments of the creature's life before it either was killed by old age or natural causes. Maybe it was hit by lightning, or it was frozen with, ice, or a larger predatory animal came and killed it. And I think that
That's entirely because I'm a firm believer in
you're kind of cutting out there. Hello, can you hear me?
So, are we still recording?
Yeah, we're recording now.
Okay. So yeah, I think I really believe in ghosts. In fact,
You're starting to cut out again.
Oh, I think my 4G is lacking. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I can hear you now.
Wow. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, this cat darted out in front of me, almost almost made me break my neck. Not too long ago, maybe it was just a couple of weeks ago, I guess it was. And I was walking down the hallway, and our studio is right off of that hallway, and the door was open at the studio, and I passed it, and I heard this hiss. And I saw this image, this dark image, flash out in front of my feet, and I went, oh, damn, cat was killing me. And then I looked up, and our own cat, our real cat, I looked into the living room, and she's sound asleep on the couch. So I'm like, oh, great, So, but we've had other experiences where, we'll feel it rubbing up against our leg or something like that, or we'll jump up the bed or something like that. But, yeah, so I can see, certainly, realm of the paranormal isn't exclusive to human beings. So yeah, I can see how that could possibly be a reasonable explanation behind these things.
Yeah, and I think that is now I'm not saying that somewhere out in the depths of the oceans there's not a plesiosaur creature or a mosasaur or a pilosaur, swimming around. I'm just saying that for the Great Lakes, because they are now landlocked, and the passageways, like everybody says, oh, well, but the Mississippi. Well, thing about the Mississippi is there are gates and dams that have been put into place to stop the silver carp invasion into the Great Lakes. So if a silver carp can't get into the Great Lakes, then nothing bigger is going to get in. Every year people, oh, did you hear about the shark report in Lake Michigan? Okay, let me put this out there. The only shark species that can survive full time for the rest of its life in fresh water would be a bull shark. But unfortunately, bull sharks are a tropical, subtropical water temperature shark, meaning it has to be warm. The Great Lakes do not stay warm for very long.
Right. I used to live in New Orleans, and in Lake Pontchartrain there, we would get the occasional bull shark swimming in from the Gulf.
Yep. But that's a much warmer water system. Here in the Great Lakes, Lake Huron, no, Lake Erie would be the only one that would be warm, stay warm long enough for something to thrive in it. But Lake Erie has its own issues because every year it has a huge toxic algae bloom from all the runoff, and it's like 25 miles plus of the lake's area. So, and a shark cannot, thrive in that. Lake Michigan, that it could possibly get into if it were able to, if all the dams and bridges and gates were open, it could possibly swim up. It could only survive in the shallowest parts of the lake along the lake shore, and that would be, August, maybe into September, and then after that, the water just gets way too cold.
Right. And speaking of cold waters, that was one of the explanations I read about Nessie in Loch Ness, in that it could possibly be a green shark, I think they called it, but
a Greenland shark.
Yeah, and it's adapted apparently to the cold waters up there. So I mean that could be an explanation.
And that could be because the Greenland shark, it is a deep water shark, but it's used to the very cold waters. But I believe it is, now I've never been to Loch Ness, so I think it's either brackish, or because there are some streams that come in through, or riverways that come in through the ocean, so it might be at different levels of the water, because believe it's every 10 or 15 feet it's a different underwater climate, so you do have the possibility for the salinity changes of the water, but you'd have to have a environment that the creature could surface through to breathe air if it needed to, and then go back down into the depths.
Yeah, and from what I understand, in Loch Ness, there's also a vast cave system down there. So I think, if this thing really does exist there, I can see how, kind of like Bigfoot, where it's in an area where it could remain hidden for the majority of the time pretty easily. That on top of the fact that Loch Ness is so thick with peat.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah, it would. I mean, it's possible, but I don't think it would be a humongous creature, especially if it's having to navigate through caves. I'm thinking you would probably be looking at the largest, maybe a 15-foot creature.
Right. recently, the scientists came out and said it's probably an eel. Well, the largest eel known to mankind is only about 4 or 5 feet long. And so I don't see how this could be so easily expanded away as just being an eel, unless it's some sort of mutant eel that science has yet to discover.
Right, and it might be more plausible if it was a large lake sturgeon, which, I mean, the sturgeons here in the Great Lakes top out, I think, around 10 feet, but
Right.
there are other species of sturgeon that get much bigger, much heavier, and are more potential, especially with that kind of domed, humped back that they have. If you're seeing two or three of those going along in the water in a school, then that gives the appearance of a larger animal.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Not saying that, I'm not disproving the plesiosaur theory, at all, but I'm just giving, if it was a estimate of a natural occurring creature, that would be my guess, would be one of the giant sturgeon species.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, I remain kind of skeptical about so many different reports of cryptids. That's not to say don't or did believe. It's just the validity of a lot of these reports. And I think that some of these other cryptids, I don't know that they could exist in these regions without being discovered all the time. Such as you had mentioned the lizard men. I mean, in that area, even though it's in kind of a swampy area, I mean, people traverse through there a lot, and so I think you would see a lot more reports for that. But things like Sasquatch and lake monsters, and certainly the dogmen. I mean, I'm very convinced that they exist.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's some cryptids that I put more stock into than others, especially when you're looking at like the goat man or sheep squatch, I believe, is one of them.
Right.
All the different creatures that they come up with on the Mountain Monster show. Some of those, it's like, okay, are you just like giving more popularity to a version of Bigfoot, or because there's different names for the Bigfoots, different depending on what region it's in. I mean, in Ohio they have the Ohio Grassman, and then there's the Ozark Howler, and there's all these different ones. But I think that the Bigfoots, the Dogman, the lake monsters are more of a possibility of being a natural occurring creature, and then creatures like the Mothman, the gargoyle type creatures. Those I think are more interdimensional, and they are more in the realm of like the aliens and the UFOs. They can come and go as they please.
I
But
could not possibly agree with you more. I was just mentioning this to my co-host Ralph about this, that I thought that these the gargoyles and the Mothmen could be interdimensional. Prior to that, I was thinking people were mistaking them for pterodactyls or that kind of species that may have, because there's a huge cave system in specifically in the southeast, and that's where a lot of these things are seen. And so I thought, I think it's possible if they survived this long that they could remain undetected in these caves. But then, it did occur to me that they could possibly be interdimensional beings.
and that's why I think that there's lots and lots of sighting reports, especially with Mothman. There were sighting reports way before the silver bridge collapse, before the report of, the Men in Black, before people started to, see this all around the town of, Pleasant in West Virginia. There, people who were living in more of the mountain areas, where the mines and stuff like that are, were reporting a creature like this for up to 5 years before. So, but there was never any, except for eyewitness reports, nobody has ever, gotten any film of it, any pictures, any video. There's never been any, tracks found, any nesting areas. So I think that is a very good case scenario for an interdimensional creature that comes and goes as it pleases and interacts with us on its own, intent. It's going to do what it wants, not necessarily what, we, think it's going to do. So, but this, I have seen reports of a similar creature in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky. So it's almost has like a circle migratory path that it takes around that area. And they see it, at different times of the year. So, and there are still people who report seeing, not just in West Virginia, but in different locations, a similar creature.
Mm-hmm. Who are an expert, really, on cryptids. I have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
I want to know your thoughts on both the Jersey Devil as well as the Chupacabra, and if you think that they exist.
Now, okay, so the Jersey Devil is very, very steeped in legend. Going back to colonial times, people were seeing, this creature. And in the Pine Barrens, where it's reported, the reported sightings come from, people have been reporting for a very, very long time that there is lots of strange activities. So I have this theory about thought forms, and that if enough people put enough energy into believing something is out there, it will manifest itself.
Right, I believe the same thing.
And I think that is a very good case for the Jersey Devil, with people having seen this creature over decades, because the legend of Mary Leeds goes back to like early 1800s, I believe, maybe 1700s. But people are still reporting, this creature, to this day. So it might be that if it was a real creature and it did, once, live here on the earth, but let's say it went off into the woods and died, but its spirit or its ghost is still lurking, in our reality, then there's a possibility that people are still seeing it. And the more fear, and this goes, anybody who does paranormal investigations will tell you, the more fear that you feed an entity, the stronger it gets. The more psychic energy it harvests from somebody, or the more negative energy it can pull from somebody, the stronger it gets. And that may be the case with this Jersey Devil. Now, the Chupacabra, if we're talking the Latin American legend of the Chupacabra, I think that there may be down in, Latin America, there may be a creature that is undocumented to science, that is going in and killing different farm animals, draining them of blood. But if we're coming up into the United States, I think then it becomes more of a superstition. And that in order to keep the superstition going, some people go out and, slaughter these chickens. It's kind of like not knowing how you were grown up, but kind of like telling kids that there's monsters out in the woods so that they stay in the house at night. Now, for these hairless canine creatures that are being reported in the Southwest and other, parts of the country, having worked with dogs almost all of my life, having been a groomer for 20 plus years, I can tell you that mange is a nasty, nasty thing. And these,
that's what I was going to bring up. I think it's entirely possible it's just coyotes with mange.
And coyotes, coy dogs, different, types of dogs. There are actual dog breeds that are hairless. But when they're out in the sun, if they're being bitten by flies, if they're being eaten up by fleas, their skin takes on that scabby, scarred, tissuey look. And these poor animals are running around in this dreaded condition. And there's no way to really treat them because if they're wild, it's not like you can treat and release because as soon as they're around other animals or they're exposed to conditions that brought on the mange in the first place, it'll just remanifest. And so a lot of times when I'm seeing these videos of what they call these blue dogs or the chupacabras that they're saying are running down the road, and they're these black or blue skinned, scabby looking dogs, what I'm seeing is a dog that has mange very, very badly, has probably been inbred within its pack or whatever it's, because these are fully intact animals. They're not spayed or neutered. So they're obviously part of a breeding population. And depending on their range and territory, they're probably still interbreeding with each other. So you're getting deformities. You're getting these odd appearances because the genetic line needs to have new DNA put into it in order to not have genetics. You can only breed brother to sister so many times before things start looking really weird.
Yeah, right.
And the more that you do those inbreedings within a pack, the lower the immunity is to rabies, mange, any of those types of diseases. And so you have the potential for these poor animals to, they're actually suffering, because the more they itch, the more they expose the, wounds, and then those wounds get, parasites in them. And so it's actually a very sad cycle of injury for them.
Why do you think it is that we to find corpses? If you say, and I believe are, eventually they would probably die from their injuries.
So the thing about nature is a multi-opportunist where nothing goes wasted. So what happens when a animal or a person dies out in the wilderness? You have your big predators that come along and they eat the meat and the soft tissues. And then you have the predatory birds that come along and pick off everything else. Now, the bones that are left, calcium is a very highly sought after mineral in the wild. So you have your smaller scavengers like porcupines, like raccoons, skunks, squirrels, chipmunks, mice. They come along, they grab these bones, and they take them off to wherever their little nesting areas, and then they gnaw on those bones because calcium builds bones, and if you have a female, she wants that calcium because that enriches her milk for her offspring. And so that's why it's very hard to find remains out in the forest. It actually has to be in order to find a fully intact skeleton of anything, you have to have just the right circumstances where either there's no natural predators or rodents or anything like that in the area, or it has to have been buried almost instantly by, like a landslide or something like that. And then over the course of a couple of years, water, runoff has uncovered the body once again.
Interesting.
Or if through watching us, like for the Sasquatch, let's say, maybe they have taken notice of the human practice of burying their, the remains of loved ones, and so maybe they, have a similar um, culture where once one of them dies, um, if they have a family group, maybe they do bury them under rocks or wood or something like that to protect the body from scavengers and elements. But we don't know. We haven't found graveyards or buried Sasquatches, so it's very hard to tell if they have that similarity to us. But for a body out in the woods or out in the elements, anything that comes across it, that's free, free meal, free, supplements that are very sought after.
I heard a report about big bear guy was in the middle of the woods. I don't remember what he's doing, but he saw like and looked to him that they were burying the another Bigfoot.
And that could be within the animal kingdom. There are different cultures. So let's say that you have an East Coast group of Bigfoots. They might do things differently than West Coast or from Southern or Northern.
Sure, like different cultures.
Yes. So if you take so I'm going to use this as a reference, the feeding and hunting patterns of killer whales. So the killer whales off of New Zealand feed mainly on manta rays, and they have a whole system of how they catch and kill manta rays and eat them. But the killer whales off of the coast of California are eating great white sharks and sea lions. Their behavior and how they catch those are very different than the killer whales that are in Alaska, and are, they have a whole system for how they hunt seals and walruses, and because they use the ice floats as actually part of their hunting strategy.
Right. And I saw a video once where they were creating waves to knock a seal off of one of these ice floats.
Yep.
I think the killer whales, the orcas, their hunting systems are just fascinating to me.
Yeah.
How much they've developed it.
But
and how much they work as a team.
But in each area of the world, they all have a different system of hunting, and they have different calls and vocalizations that they make. So now I think that orcas, killer whales, are one of the smartest species on the planet.
Oh, yeah.
That are non-human. So you take the Sasquatch, which is just on a different branch of the evolutionary tree from humans, in being a primate, a bipedal upright primate, and you take in consideration that there are pockets of them all around the world, and if they're anything like the great apes or like human beings, we tend to stay in groups. Not right now with the social distancing, but family groups tend to stay in contact, and they tend to stay within the same location. most families, will grow up in one town, and one or two might move away to a different area, but that applies with almost any group of animals. And I think
Right.
that the Sasquatches are no different. I think that there is safety in numbers, and especially with female with young. You might not have a bunch of adult males, breeding males in the same, location, but I can almost guarantee you will have several females with offspring in the same area, because it's easier and safer to raise young together, where two moms can watch the whole group of children, while the other moms are either catching a deer to eat, or getting fish out of the river, or collecting fruit to eat, than it is for one mom with a couple of sibling children to try to do all that work herself.
Right. It's like that old saying, it takes a village,
Yes.
Yeah. Um, quickly getting back to what I was uh, saying about this guy, I think he was working in the lumber industry, and he saw this gathering, and they were burying a Bigfoot. He left to go get his camera. He had to go back to town to get his camera because he thought, he'd be able to go there, bury the Bigfoot and get footage of it. But by the time he got back there, they had apparently noticed his presence, because thing was there, and but you could see an area with Bigfoot imprints all around, and it looked like they were dragging a body. So there was that. So he got back. I mean, that's not necessarily proof, but I mean, it was a story I recently heard. And I also think that the reason they can't find Bigfoot carcasses is because, I mean, the majority of the sightings are up in the Northwest, and you know as well as I do how much it rains there.
Yes.
And under that forest canopy, things tend to rot at accelerated pace. And like you said, scavengers certainly, there. But I think that aside, I think that is why we haven't found any bones either, is because of the dampness there.
Well,
what do you think of that?
Look at how many times, especially like with the 411 reports, where people go hiking, and they for whatever reason they leave the trail that they're on, and then they're gone. And half of the time, no body is ever recovered. You have to wonder okay, if the person died and they're out here in the woods, where did the body go?
Right.
So if that happens with people, and especially if they're carrying any type of navigational device or anything that has a GPS that can be tracked, but we're still not finding the body, you have to wonder, okay, what happened? Where did the body go?
Mm-hmm.
So if that can happen,
I'm sorry.
I said if that can happen with just people going out hiking, fishing, hunting, then a species that doesn't want to be detected, I could see how much harder it would be to find any remains.
Right. We have a problem with that here. I'm in Las Vegas, but here in Nevada, we have something called the Nevada Triangle, which not a lot of people know about, I guess, but it goes from Reno to Tahoe, and I don't remember exactly where the definition of the triangle is, but it's that case where people go up there and they hike, or they fly over it, and they just disappear.
Yep.
And never to be found. And once in a while they'll come out, and they won't have reasonable explanations, or they don't have memory of it, and they're gone for weeks, and then suddenly they show up, and it's very strange. I think UFOs have a lot to do with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a couple different Devil's Triangles here in the Great Lakes that are actually within the confines of the lakes, but I think those are very fascinating. I'm actually doing more research into the ones that are around here, but people just think there's the Bermuda Triangle, but it's like, no, These
No, there are triangles all over the world.
yes,
All
there
over
are
the world.
triangles all over the world, and there's lots of strange, weird activity that happens within them.
Yeah, we actually did a show on that on our YouTube channel about various triangles all over the world. And it was pretty interesting research, actually.
Yeah, and so to me, it's really interesting to hear that there's one in Nevada that is has lots of weird activity in it.
Yeah. We had a lot of weird things happening here. People say, "Oh, I want to go to Area 51," and I'm like, "Why? I live in the suburbs of Las Vegas, and all I have to do pretty much is go outside and look up."
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it happens all the time, but I mean, I've lived here for just over 5 years, and I've had, I don't remember now. I honestly probably about 8 sightings. Something that I don't know if it's alien or not. It's certainly something I can identify. And
Right.
so I mean, there are a lot of weird things in the Nevada skies here.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to go to Area 51, but I might go to Rachel, Nevada, and do a travel story on that. But I don't think I want to
We've
mess
been
with.
wanting to do that for a long time. We want to go to the Little Alien there in
Yes,
Rachel
yes.
and interview the owners, because I'm sure they have some stories to tell, and I'm sure a lot of them are pretty actually.
Yeah, like I said, that is their normal. Where everybody else is like, "Oh, that's paranormal." They're like, "No, this is normal. This is normal every day. Open at 8 a.m., close at 10."
Right.
Well, it's been we're coming up on hour and 17 minutes. So are there any upcoming projects that you're working on? I know you mentioned the YouTube channel and your podcast. Will we be seeing you at any events, or are you doing anything interesting projects?
On temporary hiatus. Go there. It's Black Lotus Productions. It's youtube.com/Black Lotus Productions. Go there and check it out. I think that your listeners would certainly enjoy it, because what we do is we talk about, like I said, we focus on one topic on each one of these. Whether it's a haunting somewhere, or if it's we have a series called Cryptids Across America, where we pretty much throw a dart at a map and where the land goes, all the cryptids. That thing. We talk, and but anyway, we have well over 100 videos there. But we are on a temporary hiatus now, scheduling issues.
Yep.
However, we are still doing the Paranormal News Network, and that's where we talk about the latest in paranormal news, and we also have interviews with fascinating people. We just had, like I said, we had Heidi Hollis on there, who was an expert on the shadow people and Hat Man, and then we had a scientist on there who was a biologist who UFOs, and he's taking a scientific approach. We also had Erica Lukes on there, and you may remember her from her experience with Muthon and Water Ranch. And then we had Kimberly O'Connor, who was a repeated abductee her entire life. So yeah, we have quite a few very interesting people on there with us. But yeah, we also, at the opening of the show, we always give the latest in paranormal news, that kind of thing. But yeah, we're doing that every single Wednesday still. And,
Okay.
But we hope to get back to YouTube here pretty soon, but the scheduling issue is just kind of a bear right now. But yeah, now we would like to attend some conferences. It would be wonderful. But the prices charged is just out of this world, and so we just basically can't afford to do it. I mean, like the MUFON is doing a conference here in Las Vegas here. I want to say it's in August. But they want something like $600 a ticket. It's just kind of that's really out of our range.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things we hope to do when we get back to YouTube is start going out to certain destinations around here in Las Vegas that are supposedly haunted or has a lot of UFO activity and that kind of thing. But yeah, so I think we maybe end up doing that. Right now, our YouTube channel is it's one of those YouTube channels. It's actually. I think it's my 4G. It's going in and out.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, the YouTube channel. It's not just like a typical podcast on YouTube. It's actually us sitting down and discussing this stuff. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'm hosted on, or I post all of my podcasts on YouTube, just because it's the easiest, simplest way for people to listen to it, and that's what works for me. So.
Yeah. We also have a group over at Facebook that I want to mention, and it's called the Black Lotus Discussion Group, and it's both Ralph, my co-host, and I belong to a lot of these groups on Facebook. And a lot of them are just so ridiculous, I mean, people posting funny memes and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's not a serious. It's not taken seriously.
Right. Right.
People asking, was Jesus an alien and this kind of thing. I don't know whether he was or not. I don't know, but we don't have any trolls there, and we take everything there seriously. So we have experts in the paranormal there. We have cryptid experts. We have UFO investigators there. I mean, and so people there, we get into some pretty good conversations there. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that we have that. It's Black Lotus Discussion Group at Facebook. So yeah, I wanted to mention that too.
Okay, cool. I will definitely include a link for that in the YouTube video.
Okay, great.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you tonight, and I hope you are enjoying yourself out there in Las Vegas, enjoying the social distancing. And hopefully we'll have you on the show again in the future.